Hello, everybody. My name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author, idiot, and loin streamer, and today we're going to be going over some generative AI updates. There's a lot of news to cover for a lot of different things going on, bringing some hopeful hope, not to be redundant, but bringing some hope, hopefully. And let's talk about what's going on. But before we get started, number one, if you enjoy what I do here on the channel, please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Number two, if you would like to be featured on the channel, check out the link down in the description below. There are 3 ways to be featured. Number one is through Lamoy, the monthly prompt writing contest. Number two is through the Fresh Made feature, where if you're an indie author and you have a book out or a book that is coming out, submit the first chapter in the cover and it'll be right here on the channel to hopefully help more readers find your work. And the third thing is, in the summer, I will be reading books that you guys submit, well, from a list of randomly selected. And so if you would like me to read your book or a chance for me to read your book, submit to the summer reading list and it could show up. Just prepare yourself for the way that I read and the discussions that could come forth. The third thing is, if you would like to check out any of my books, they're available at any of your favorite places. With that said, let's go ahead and jump into this because it is going to be a hefty day. First off, we have this update that happened the beginning of February in regards to the OpenAI ex-employee who was murdered when just before he was going to testify in court. Exclusive, a bombshell lawsuit accused the SF, the San Francisco Police Department, of covering up the death of the OpenAI whistleblower Suchar Balaji. They ruled his death an apparent suicide, but the case is full of contradictions, withheld evidence, and possible collusion. What are they hiding? Background. A few months before Balaji's death, he exposed the OpenAI for stealing copyrighted content per a New York Times expose published on October 23, 2024. On November 18th, he was named as a key witness in a lawsuit against OpenAI, ready to testify. A week later, he was dead. The San Francisco Police Department investigation was off from the start. When Balaji didn't respond to calls, his mother called for a wellness check. The police refused her entry and told her to go home. Hours later, without notification, they removed his body and declared his death a suicide. The family's lawsuit against the San Francisco Police Department alleges a number of shocking failures in the investigation. They never processed the scene properly, they never examined his phone or laptop, they refused to check security footage from his building, and they never interviewed key witnesses. When Balaji's mother asked to see the body, the San Francisco Medical Examiner Office told her that she wasn't allowed, claiming the bullet had destroyed his face. But when the family ordered a private autopsy, that claim turned out to be false. Question is, what are they hiding? The autopsy raised even more red flags. The bullet had a downward trajectory, which is unusual for suicide. He had a contusion on the back of his head, suggesting that he may have been hit before the gunshot. So why was this ruled a suicide so quickly? Let's also not forget that the San Francisco OCME has a history of evidence tampering. A whistleblower sued after the executive director, David Serrano Sewell, allegedly discarded human skull in a rushed cleanup. Another investigator was caught stealing from the dead. When the family demanded further investigation, the San Francisco Police Department said that the case was already closed. But when they requested to see the police report, the San Francisco Police Department claimed that it was still open and refused to release the records. This contradiction alone suggests deliberate obstruction. Now, let's talk about San Francisco politics. OpenAI, based in San Francisco, could bring billions, if not trillions, to the city. Its CEO, Sam Altman, has deep political ties, including a trusted advisor to the new mayor, Daniel Lurie. Could this be why the San Francisco police was so eager to shut down the case? In summary, the lawsuit against the San Francisco police lay out a clear case as they failed to conduct a real investigation, contradicted themselves to block records, ignored forensic evidence of foul play, and refused to analyze digital evidence that could hold key information. So there is all of that going on. It's still an ongoing case, but a lot of sketchiness, though we knew it was sketchy from the beginning, I just gotta say. I don't think there was anyone in the initial reporting of that that was not like, I believe it. Going over here to Gary Marcus, yet another OpenAI safety researcher has left, claiming that the company is taking a very risky gamble with humanity and pointing out that no lab has a solution to align AI today. The faster we race, the less likely that anyone finds one in time. So again, it's from the very beginning. It's been as fast as you can get stuff out there before the doors close, before the lawsuits, before the law changes. It's always been a don't ask, just do. Which brings us to Ars Technica. You can't say that nobody knew this was wrong. Torrenting from a corporate laptop doesn't feel right. Meta emails unsealed. Newly unsealed emails allegedly provide the most damning evidence yet against Meta in a copyright case raised by book authors aligned that Meta illegally trained its AI models on pirated books. Last month, Meta admitted to torrenting a controversial large dataset known as LibGen, which includes tens of millions of pirated books. But details around the torrenting were murky until yesterday when Meta unredacted emails were made public for the first time. The new evidence showed that Meta torrented at least 81.7 terabytes of data across multiple shadow libraries through the site and archives, including at least 35.7 terabytes of data from zLibrary and LibGen, the author's court filing said, and Meta also previously torrented 80.6 terabytes of data from LibGen. The magnitude of Meta's unlawful torrenting scheme is astonishing, the author filing alleged, insisting that vastly small acts of data piracy, just 0.008% of the amount of the copyrighted works that Meta pirated, have resulted in judges referring the conduct to the U.S. Attorney's Office for Criminal Investigation. Seeding expands authors' distribution theory. Book authors have been pressing Meta for more information on the torrenting because of the obvious copyright concern over Meta seeding and thus seemingly distributing the pirated books in the dispute. But Meta resisted those discovery attempts after the order denied authors' request to review Meta's torrenting and seeding data. That didn't stop authors from gathering evidence anyway, including a key document that starts with at least one staffer appearing to uncomfortably joke about the possible legal risks, eventually growing more serious about raising his concerns. Torrenting from a corporate laptop doesn't feel right, Nikolay Bashlikov, a Meta research engineer, wrote in April of 2023 message, adding a smiley emoji. In the same message, she expressed concern about using Meta IP addresses to load through torrents pirate content. By September of 2023, Bashlikov had seemingly dropped the emojis, consulting the legal team directly and emphasizing in an email that using torrents would entail seeding the files, i.e. sharing the contents outside, and this could be legally not okay. Emails discussing torrenting prove that Meta knows that it was illegal, authors alleged, and Bashlikov's warnings seemingly landed on deaf ears, with authors alleging that evidence showed Meta chose to instead hide its torrenting at best as it could while downloading and seeding terabytes of data from multiple shadow libraries as recently as April 2024. Meta allegedly concealing seeding. Supposedly, Meta tried to conceal the seeding by not using Facebook servers while downloading the datasets to avoid the risk of anyone tracing back the seeder/downloader from Facebook servers. An internal message from Meta researcher Frank Zong said, while describing the work as being in stealth mode. Meta also allegedly modified settings so that the smallest amount of seeding possible could occur, the Meta executive in charge of the project management, Michael Clark, said in deposition. Now the new information has come to light. Authors claim that Meta staff involved in the decision to torrent LibGen must be disposed again because the new facts allegedly contradict prior deposition testimony. Mark Zuckerberg, for example, claimed to have no involvement in decisions to use LibGen to train AI models, but unredacted messages show the decision to use LibGen occurred after a prior escalation to MZ, authors alleged. Meta did not immediately respond to R's request for comment and has maintained throughout the litigation that AI training on LibGen was fair use. However, Meta has previously addressed its torrenting in a motion to dismiss filed last month, telling the court that plaintiffs do not plead a single instance in which any part of any book was, in fact, downloaded by a third party from Meta via torrent, much less that plaintiff books were somehow distributed by Meta. While Meta may be confident in its legal strategy, despite the new torrenting wrinkle, the social media company has seemingly complicated its case by allowing authors to expand the distribution theory that's key to winning a direct copyright infringement claim beyond just claiming that Meta's AI outputs unlawfully distributed their work. As limited discovery on Meta's seeding now proceeds, Meta is not fighting the seeding aspect of the direct copyright infringement claim at this time, telling the court that it plans to set the record straight and debunk a meritless allegation on summary judgment. So, if they have evidence of them stealing over 100 trilobytes of data from shadow libraries, that is still pirating, and that is pirating a lot. Whether they've put it into AI training or not, it's not fair use. These companies would get you for pirating if you pirated that stuff to them and were distributing it. They want to get on you for doing that to any of their products. How many times have we been in the movie theaters in the last like 20 years, 30 years, where it's been, you wouldn't download a car, would you? And being told it's a crime to download a movie and watch it yourself at your house. Did the FBI not shut down, was it Z Library a year or two ago because of that? And then you also have, it was the Open Library Project that just got pwned for doing the same thing and giving out people's books. So, like, we'll see. Over here with AV Club, you have Thomson Reuters says AI copyright win blows a hole in AI industry's fair use defense. Thomas Reuters won the first significant copyright case on AI company today. Reuters, which in addition to owning the international news agency, created a legal research database through its firm Westlaw, claims Ross, the maker of a similar AI-powered database, stole copyrighted information to train its system. Following a 2023 decision in favor of the jury trial to determine how much creative spark Ross's product had, U.S. District Court Judge Stefanos Bibas revised his previous decision and granted Reuters a partial summary judgment. The judge determined that the AI industry's understanding of fair use is flawed. As Wired notes, the judgment blows a hole in the AI's industry fair use defense. The industry had used fair use, the same parody laws that birthed dumb Starbucks, to claim that what they do, e.g., scraping original information from the internet and spitting out a summary, is legal. However, the judge found that it is not substantially transformative, meaning that it had no further purpose or different character from its commercial competitor Westlaw. There is nothing that Thomas Reuters created that Ross could not have created for itself, Bibas continued, or hired legalese to create it without infringing Thomson Reuters' copyright. The case mostly came down to headnotes, which summarizes and organizes key points of law through the key number system. Judicial opinions aren't copyright, but people made Westlaw headnotes. Ross created a search engine using AI and asked Westlaw to license content to train the system. When Westlaw refused, Ross went to another competitor, Legalese, for training data. Legalese gave the lawyers doing the training a guide to explaining how to create training data using Westlaw headnotes while telling them not to copy and paste the information. The judge found that Ross infringed thousands of headnotes, likening the situation to a sculptor. Judge Bibas writes that a block of raw marble is not copyrightable. However, a sculptor chiseling the marble into a sculpture is. A headnote is a carefully chosen fraction of a whole, identifying which words matter and chiseling away at the surrounding mass expressed by the editor's idea about what's important. Editorial expressions have enough creative spark to be original. The case is likely the first significant blow to the AI industry's legal wars against copyright because the fair use defense would be useless. There are dozens of such cases in the US and around the world at the moment. For its part, Ross Intelligence shut down in 2021 because of litigation costs. Unfortunately, the other companies currently trying to get users to use unreliable hallucination computer programs have all the money in the world and seemingly control of the US government. So, yeah, that just sounds like these companies have no respect for your individual rights, your individual properties, your individual creations, your individual identity. It reminds me a lot of when one of the companies went to Scarlett Johansson and asked her to use her voice and she said no, and they did it anyway. These guys went to the company, asked, hey, can we use your stuff for training data? They said no. And then they hired guys to go and rip them off and just rewrite stuff anyway to then feed it, like rewrite their website to feed into the thing anyway. That's just what they do. They don't care. It's just about getting the information to replace you. With Louisa Jarosky, we have AI research. As the global AI landscape undergoes profound changes, Anu Bradford's paper, The False Choice Between Digital Regulation and Innovation, is a must read. So this is going to relate back to especially how many people argue that we have to get rid of intellectual property in order to keep up and innovate. So why should we have digital regulation? at all. Quote, of course, not all digital regulation is beneficial, but neither is all innovation. While many techno-optimists herald the revolutionary nature of digital technologies, others question whether today's leading tech companies are producing truly welfare-enhancing innovations that are leading to meaningful technological progress and economic growth or enhancing the human experience. A growing number of technologists, investors, journalists, and politicians are criticizing tech companies' business models that rely on the exploitation of internet users' data, asking whether those digital services ought to be considered innovations that are worth shielding from regulations. In reassessing tech regulations, the EU should think more carefully about innovation, including what kind of innovation its tech regulations ought to advance. This includes the EU asking whether it even wants to nurture a European Google if doing so embraces a business model that is based on extracting user data in which that contradicts the EU's steadfast commitment to protect European citizens from such exploitation. This will be listed down below if you want to read the whole thing. A reminder that tomorrow's 5 p.m. UK time, the author of this will have a conversation covering the global AI race, regulation, and power. So if you would like more information on their discussion and their perspective, it'll all be linked below. Now, while all of this is going on, and you have creation of fake information, you also have fake true crime information, which is an insult to not only any creative industry, but to victims of violent crime. So the whole idea of true crime is it is a true crime. Like it's something that actually happened. And you really should not. There is such a line here. And maybe it would be like making an argument about maybe we shouldn't have crime novels because it's creating a fake situation of murder for entertainment. A little bit different than writing something and presenting it as the truth, because labeling something as true crime automatically labels it as nonfiction. Maybe there are enough crimes in the world that you should just make a true crime podcast that is nonfiction or get out instead of, but of course, asking anybody that does this stuff to have any sense of ethics or moral at all is wasted breath. But there are some things that just don't need to be turned into entertainment, and that is creating fake true crimes using generative AI. But that's where we're at. So Elizabeth Hernandez found out about a decades-old murder from a flurry of tips sent to her newsroom in August of last year. The tips were all reacting to a YouTube video with a shocking title, Husband's Secret Gay Love Affair with Stepson Ends in Grisly Murder. It described a gruesome crime that apparently took place in Littleton, Colorado. Almost 2 million people had watched it. Some people, in fact, were saying, why didn't the Denver Post cover this? Hernandez, a reporter at the paper, told me, because the video, it makes it sound like the biggest news event, and yet when you Google it, there's no coverage. The reason for the lack of coverage was pretty clear to her. In the 26-minute-long video, a stilted voice narrated over a hazy still images of a neighborhood that really didn't look like Littleton. Hernandez called several law enforcement officials and quickly confirmed her suspicion. The murder was fake, and the video was made using generative AI. The video was uploaded to YouTube by a channel called True Crime Case Files. Before the channel was terminated while I was working on the story in January, it had posted more than 150 similar videos over the past year. This one was the most popular. The plots were disturbing, often hypersexual. They described parents selling teenagers into sex slavery with a sheriff, a transgender teacher committing murders to hide affairs with students. The video thumbnails were perverse with clickbaity phrases and a blocky white text. Sheriff murders after affair with secretary got exposed with 30,000 views. Wife's secret affair with the neighbor's teenage daughter ends in grisly murder with 34,000 views. Coach gives cheerleader HIV after secret affair leading to pregnancy with 10,000 views. Each one of these were made by AI, and the crimes described did not happen. There was no language on the channel's homepage or in the video's description to tell the viewer otherwise. According to the man who ran the page, that was by design. It needed to be called true crime because true crime is a genre, the channel owner told me over the phone. In December, I wanted the audience to think about why they care so much about what is true, why it matters so much to them that real people are being murdered. I was able to verify and contact the man who ran the channel. 404 Media is using a pseudonym with him, Paul, because he has received threats and this channel is no longer active. There are a couple of reasons why people look at true crime. Number one, true crime is an expression discussion of things that actually happened, of things that you can track, of events that took place in people's lives. It can be an interest in human nature, in human development. It can be people looking to follow up on the ways, on things that have shaped our culture and our understanding of things, or it can be an interest in the depravity that is true. But there is a difference between true crime and crime fiction. It does matter that it's true, because the truth says something different than something fictional. And this guy pretending that it is for some other reason that he was lying about his stuff being true crime, it was not, this is a social experiment to see why do you care if it's true or not. I was curious about how the whole operation worked, and Paul is not the first person to lie on the internet, but it felt like he was lying in a brand new way. Paul had found his own niche within the AI-generated slop ecosystem that 404 had reported on in the last few months. He believed that people wouldn't want to watch his videos if they knew that they were fake. Well, no, duh. People don't click, which is fraud. He specifically lied about what he was doing in order to trick people into watching it because he knew that people wouldn't want to if they knew what he was doing. It's fraud. And he wasn't any worse than the competition. You are worse. If you're selling fiction as nonfiction, you are worse than the competition. You are a liar. True crime, it's entertainment masquerading as news. That's all there is to it. No. Actually, there are a lot of people trying to inform about social issues, informing about predators, informing about disputes between about domestic violence that happens. If all you see in true crime is entertainment, yeah, there are people that just use it as entertainment, or that present it as just entertainment, but that's not all that it is. And that is a sick simplification. The ones that commodify true crime are actually a problem, but there is actually a purpose for sharing true crime information. You're actually hiding perpetrators, hiding true crime events, hiding true things that have happened to people, and insulting the dead and insulting the victims by doing this, and by saying there's no difference between your fiction and the nonfiction. Paul told me that he tried to get people to question the reality of his videos by naming characters strangely or inserting bizarre details into his script, but if you looked at the comments on his videos, there were a lot of people who couldn't tell that they weren't real. Whatever moral lesson Paul said that he wanted to impart clearly didn't land on the most commenters. He didn't have a moral anything. He's making, my opinion is it's BS. Quote, I'm 100% confident that sexual relationships between the stepfather and the stepson started way before he was 19. Read one of the top comments on the video Hernandez found. There are countless others, all hypothesizing about the fake police investigation and the fake criminals. I'm trying to overdose the viewers on luridness to try to confront them with the fact that they seem to be so invested in the luridness of it all. People's secret lives, their secret affairs that are really taboo, Paul told me. Of course, Paul was also making money off of the video. Let me tell Paul, if you want to do this, if you want to experiment with the luridness in which people are attracted to, just get into writing dark romance, okay? Then you can do all your social experiments over there, but don't freaking do it as fiction parading around as nonfiction. It's so unethical. And then to be like, oh, it's for the greater good, to like make people look at themselves in the mirror of like, why are they into this content? You don't know. About half of each video was made by using ChatGPT or an AI image service, Paul said. The other half, the bones of the story, small details, and edits are all his. He typically made 1 or 2 videos a week, which took about 2.5 hours each, and billed himself as a filmmaker, once seizing on a new era of content without the need for expensive crews and camera equipment. Calling true crime content, Paul told me that he graduated college just before COVID-19 pandemic forced Americans inside for a year. During that time, he moved back home with his parents. While some families baked sourdough bread, Paul's family did something different. Together, they started to binge watch Dateline. Paul mapped out a formula for the genre as he watched it. A scandalous affair, some brutal crime, interrogating the suspect, and a stunning trial of a perpetrator to bring things home. But once he figured out that formula, the show became less appealing. Once you see how the sausage is made, you don't really want to eat it too much. What do you think happens with crimes? Usually, yeah, somebody commits a crime, there is an inciting incident. If they are caught, they go to trial. Like, it's not a sausage being made. It's not a product. It's a crime. It's the legal system. I don't know what you do with somebody like this. As As he tired of Dateline, Paul started experimenting with ChatGPT. His first experiments with a product also relied on something generic television formula that he was familiar with: Hallmark Christmas movies. Paul did this by first typing the prompt into ChatGPT. Then he took those generated still images of characters and backgrounds to make short Hallmark rom-com parodies on YouTube. They had titles like Princess Meets Fisherman and Romance and the Reindeer. All included a disclaimer that they were generated with AI. These videos bombed. Not one has more than 100 views. He attributed that to the limitations of generative AI that he used at the time and disclosing how he made each video. Well, yeah, because people are not interested in generative AI. He's like, I don't want to do anything, learn anything, so I'm just going to like generate stuff, and then when people don't want it, I'm going to lie to them so that they want it. I labeled it as AI parody, and it didn't do well. I think part of it is that people are just hostile towards AI, so when they see the word AI, they just freak out about it. Fraud. I got no other words for this but fraud. I think the videos also sucked. Paul disagrees with me on that. Paul would. Paul sounds like a character, to put it nicely. The next idea was to ditch any disclaimer about how the video was made. He noticed just how high a demand for true crime was and how low a production value could be for a fake documentary. With that, True Crime Case Files was born. It was almost sort of like a gold rush. I really felt like I needed to stake my claim before anybody else thought of it. Even though Paul's videos are themselves a variation of a popular genre, his channel's success had, at least in this singular respect, proved him right. There are several other copycat channels that either rip in his videos entirely or mimic his style. A few even copied the title of Paul's most popular video and posted their own AI-generated version, none quite as popular as his. It's an absurd art form. I'm not going to say it again. To debate with Paul about the ethics of his videos means constantly retreading the same ground, then it could be futile. But here's what he says. True crime, at the end of the day, it's a form of entertainment. Viewers are watching this not to be informed about things that will affect them personally. They're really just there to be entertained and to have this thrilling mystery and some lurid elements. No, if they wanted just fake crime, they go and look at fake crime. True crime is something specific. It's disgusting. And no, not all true crime viewers are into that. Some, sure, not all. It's almost become a national pastime. Like bullfighting, he said. People just passively observe it. And they don't even question, why am I enjoying this violence so much? True crime is, of course, astronomically popular. More than half of all Americans say that they consume some form of the genre, and true crime made up the top 3 of Apple's most popular podcasts in 2024. Okay, but put that's AI generated and see if you're just as popular, because people just want the lurid details, right? It's also not new argument that true crime genre might have some problems. According to some experts, it might re-victimize people who have already suffered. It acts similarly to local TV news that leads with the bloodiest crime of the night, which research shows makes viewers more afraid. Other experts also say it influences our ideas on the common crimes, victims, and investigators. The way that we see true evils committed on the screen shapes how we expect it to happen in real life. Paul says what he is doing is no worse than the actual sins of a true crime genre. In fact, he says that his version is better because he isn't exploiting any real victims. Bro, no. Viewers get their pint of blood, he makes his videos, and money, and no one is harmed in the process. There is no difference between us except that I am not using real people and their suffering is my vehicle. Yes, you are. And you're using it twice because you're also victimizing people yourself with generative AI, buddy. This is such a narcissistic complex. Not to like throw that word around because it's already used around, but like, tell me what else this is. I'm not a bad guy. In fact, I'm a better person than all the rest of you, is what I'm getting from this. That doesn't sit right with Annie Nichols. Nichols is a victim advocate in Washington. Her sister, Polly Klaas, was murdered in 1993 and was the subject of exhaustive true crime documentaries, podcasts, and television adaptations. She also has lots of problems with true crime media. Nicole, however, says what Paul is doing isn't any better. Victims are used in this way by the media and by true crime content creators, she said in the interview, where our trauma is frequently co-opted and exploited for profit. So someone generating AI true crime for profit is certainly not helping victims in any way. Nicole says that even if Paul isn't using real stories from survivors of violent crimes, the bigger societal impact is the same. The trappings of reality let the audience walk away with the same impression as they would with an actual crime. Though, when talking to Paul, any criticisms fall on deaf ears. It's an absurdist art form, he said. If people don't understand it, that says a lot about about human nature and their own nature and the nature of a crime, and perhaps they are not willing to question themselves, and I don't have any misgivings about what I'm doing. Of course you don't. Give me your thoughts on this situation, because I mean, I've already given you mine. I think he's making excuses. Obviously, he doesn't think that he's a bad person in these situations because he's doing it. He thinks that he deserves to do it. And in fact, he's saying he's better than other people who use their platforms to bring awareness to crimes, to recent crimes even, and to raise money for victims. Going over here, I'm going to introduce you now to Sam Altman's newest rival. OpenAI says that there is evidence that DeepSeek distilled the knowledge out of OpenAI's models, breaching its terms of use and infringing on intellectual property. So DeepSeek may well have broken OpenAI's terms of service and distilled its intellectual property. OpenAI may well have done an analogous thing to YouTube, New York Times, and countless artists and writers. Yeah, OpenAI is now complaining that their copyright was infringed on to make somebody's generative AI. OpenAI claims that DeepSeek stole its intellectual property to train their AI model. AI grifters last week. If AI is learning is theft, then all humanity are thieves. Anti-AI sentiment is a Luddite movement led by a privileged class. AI democratizes talent. The evolution of AI cannot be stopped. Adapt or die. AI grifters today. China stole our AI. So over here, we have China is illegally using American AI technology made by Nvidia to build a powerful AI model called DeepSeek 1. The LLM was released for free using open source license. This is a massive blow to US AI companies like OpenAI and Anthropic. So here is a bigger article on that specifically if you would like more information about it. Basically just China ripped off OpenAI's thing and made their own thing and then made it free. And now it's a threat to OpenAI's bottom dollar because OpenAI was for profit and has to give back to investors. Can't believe ChatGPT lost its job to AI. Also over here with Malort dumplings. Because it's about money and because it's about a lot of money, as we saw, especially with Sundar Balaji, it's not just money, it's murder, allegedly. Of course, DeepSeek download to be criminalized in US could mean 20 years in prison or $100 million fine. So if true, the bill is seen as the most aggressive legislative action on AI to date, and it is in favor of protecting what? A corporation worth billions of dollars because they've been invested in. In that same time period, you also had, this didn't happen because a DeepSeek attacked Nvidia. It happened because you allowed billionaires to convince you that AI hype was real and only achievable through endless scaling and processor farms that only Nvidia could provide. Money walked as soon as that lie came out, and we had Nvidia sheds almost $600 billion in market capital, biggest one-day loss in US history. And that's because there is, theoretically, many people are saying, there is a bubble on this, and the generative AI stuff is a paper dragon. They've invested so much money into this thing, which is why they can't let it fail, because they have investors. They have this money farm coming in that they have to give back on, and they can't let it fail. Meanwhile, from Reed Southern, AI art is not protected by law now. There's a reason that he didn't link to the article, but I'll give you the gist. The USCO largely maintained their previous stance, but have loosened up a bit on the term using AI tools to assist in the creative process. This is a bit vague at first, but they've made it clear that text-to-image stuff still isn't eligible for copyright, and stuff like inpainting in a case-by-case basis. For example, if you are adding items into a frame and changing this and that repeatedly to get what you want, the modifications need to rise to the minimum standard of originality. In other words, you'll need to document and prove that you did significant more involvement on a text-to-image, image-to-image, and a handful of inpainting edits. This is a bar that I don't believe most AI work comes remotely close to clearing, and it severely limits the amount and type of work that could potentially attain a copyright, either partially or fully. In regards to filmmaking, I'm not sure that they are really making a distinction between generative AI and AI tools. For example, the MPA cited a series of post-production processes, such as de-aging actors, removing unwanted objects from shots, and retroscoping that can benefit from AI. These are things that make some amount of sense to the AI assistant, as they aren't necessarily generative or unethical in nature. The Copyright Office is still firm on protecting creators. The office also rejected the idea of creating additional copyright protections for AI-generated works, taking note of potential threats to human creators while acknowledging that its effects on unemployment are difficult to predict. We share the concerns expressed about the impact of AI-generated materials on human authors and the value of their creative expression provides to society, the office said. If authors cannot make a living from their craft, they are likely to produce fewer works, and in our view, society would be poorer if the sparks of human creativity became fewer and dimmer. In essence, they've carved out a small amount of leniency in cases where AI is used as a tool in the assistance of a process, not a generative replacement of process. All of the stuff that you're used to seeing is still ineligible for copyright. I'm interested to see what the third and final report says, but in the meantime, don't listen to the AI grifters and shills. This effectively changes nothing, and if anything, solidifies the USCO's commitment to protecting creators and artists. Meanwhile, there's a recent mass art theft. Thousands of artists call for AI art auction to be canceled. The Guardian reported on the call from 3,500 artists for the Christie Inc. AI art auction to be canceled. The quotes from the letters: "Many of the artworks you plan to auction were created using AI models that are known to be trained on creative copyrighted works without a license. These models and the companies behind them exploited human artists using their work without permission or payment to build commercial AI products that compete with them. Your support of these models and the people who use them reward and further incentivize AI companies of mass theft of human works." So there was recently this company, Christie's, doing an art sale, and it was generative AI. So many artists came out to say this art auction needs to be canceled because you don't even own the rights to any of these, to sell these, exploiting these and devaluing art. The link will be down in the description below if you would like to read more on that article. Meanwhile, switching gears from the creative very briefly, we have studies are starting to show that what many of us feared. AI use might lead to over-reliance and human disempowerment. Below is the shocking conclusion of this particular study. Download for future reference. 1. We surveyed 319 knowledge workers who use genAI tools at work at least once per week to model how they enact critical thinking when using genAI tools and how genAI affects their perceived efforts of thinking critically. Analyzing 936 real-world genAI tool examples our participants shared, we find that knowledge workers engage in critical thinking primarily to ensure the quality of their work, e.g., verifying outputs against external sources. Moreover, while genAI can improve work efficiency, it can inhibit critical engagement with work and can potentially lead to long-term over-reliance on the tool and diminish skills for independent problem solving. Higher confidence in genAI's ability to perform a task is related to less critical thinking efforts. When using genAI tools, the effort invested in critical thinking shifts from information gathering to information verification, from problem solving to AI response integration, and from task execution to task stewardship. Knowledge workers face new challenges in critical thinking as they incorporate genAI into their knowledge workflows. To that end, our work suggests that genAI tools need to be designed to support knowledge workers' critical thinking by addressing their awareness, motivation, and ability barriers. So it'll be down here if you want the impact of generative AI on critical thinking, self-reported reduction in cognitive efforts, confident effect from the survey of knowledge workers. With Malharan, I often tell my students using LLMs to write papers is like going to the gym to watch a robot do bench presses. I'm saving so much time on what? And from the original commenter, whether LLMs can or cannot write well, better or worse than students is irrelevant. The purpose of writing an essay is not the essay itself. The essay is how you pursue the goal of learning how to write, learning being the purpose. If you want to learn how to write, you must write. And that's what I always say. That's why you're not a writer if you have somebody else write, if you have the generative AI write. And if people have been like, well, what about problem solving for me? No. What about having it fix a scene, like do editing to like add information, to like add emotion? Like what if I write the first draft and then I have the other one finish everything by giving it a note on how to fix it? No, you need to learn how to do it. The way that you learn to do something is by doing it. And by cheating yourself, especially in school settings, you're not learning how to do it. And you're not not writing the book if you are using these methods. Microsoft's study also finds AI makes human cognition atrophied and unprepared. A new paper from researchers at Microsoft and Carnegie Mellon University find that humans increasingly rely on generative AI in their work. They use less critical thinking, which can result in deterioration of cognitive faculties that ought to be preserved. A key irony of automation is that by mechanizing routine tasks and leaving exception handling to the human user, you deprive the user of routine opportunities to practice their judgment and strengthen their cognitive musculature, leaving them atrophied and unprepared for when exceptions do arise. And this is something that I mentioned before. Again, you're going to see this in the essay because this is all from the essay that I just talked about. But this is why I've said, like, you don't even want the thing to look in your fridge and rely on that to tell you what to eat, or to look at your clothing and to rely on that to tell you how to dress, because you want to still be making that decision for yourself, even if the decision is to wear the same outfit every day, to eat the same meal every day. Is you need to make that decision or your mind will atrophy. You won't be thinking about this thing that comes to your face. And again, it's one of the benefits I really think is behind like reading or analyzing literature or talking about literature or movies or television. Even if you come to different conclusions, is you're still thinking about the text. You're still thinking about the interactions. And that's one of the reasons why, no matter how I feel about a story, I still like to bring it to you guys to have a discussion about the contents of the stories, the themes of the stories, what we're being asked about the stories, looking at the character actions. Do we come to different conclusions about the character's actions? Why do we come to different conclusions about the character's actions or portrayals or events? Like, it's so interesting. And just all of these little things, these little conversations use your brain and have you kind of question how you take things, how other people take things. And you have to have the patience to understand that people also will read into the same thing differently. Unpopular opinion, most people haven't realized a major consequence of the ongoing AI wave. When everyday applications actively incentivize people to allow AI to do things for them, I can't help but see a major wave of disempowerment and dependency coming. Disempowerment and dependency reduce people's autonomy and make them more vulnerable to misinformation and manipulation. What social media has caused in terms of individual and social impact will be minor compared to what widespread AI integration will do. Fight against it. Fight to do things yourself, to come to conclusions yourself, to think through things yourself as much as you can. And that even includes, I had somebody before saying like, oh, so that means that you can't like call up a pizza place and like have them make a pizza for you. You should just have to make it yourself. That's not the same thing. You're making the decision, buying the pizza from somebody else who has the skill. That's fine. It's about whether or not you let the thing tell you what to do. On Reed Southern, he says, been saying this for a minute. The second you use AI for something you're an expert in, you have the ability to see it for what it is, slop. It's only impressive if you trust it blindly on things that you have no knowledge of or understanding of, which is problematic to say the least. And this goes back to Mark Cummings, who said, after using deep research for a while, I finally get the it's just slop complaint people have about AI art. Because I don't really care much about art, most AI art seems pretty good to me, but information is something where I'm really close to a connoisseur, and deep research is just nowhere near a good human output. It's not useless. I think maybe 20% of the time I got something I'm satisfied with. Even then, there's this kind of hall of mirrors quality to the output that I can't really trust it. It's subtly distorted. I feel like I'm wading through epistemic pollution. Obviously, it's going to improve and probably quite rapidly. If it read 10 times more sources through 100 times longer and had 1,000 times lower error rate, I think that would do it. So no huge leap required, just turning some knobs. It's definitely going to get there, but at the same time, it's quite jarring to me that a large faction of people already find its outputs compelling. I personally don't ever think it's going to get there because it's never going to be able to discern the truth from the not truth, to check its own sources, because it just reads whatever you put in it. Now we're going to have a little bit of some hope put in there. We've got some comments from different artists of different sorts. Number one being the national treasure of the United States, or a national treasure of the United States, Nicolas Cage, saying, protect yourself from AI interfering with your authentic and honest expressions. I'm a big believer in not letting robots dream for us. Robots cannot reflect the human condition for us. That is a dead end. If an actor lets one AI robot manipulate his or her performance even a little bit, an inch will eventually become a mile, and all integrity, purity, and truth of art will be replaced by financial interests only. We can't let that happen. It is just about financial interests, not human emotion. The jobs of all art, in my view, film performance included, is to hold a mirror to the external and internal stories of the human condition through the very human, thoughtful, and emotional process of recreation. A robot cannot do that. If we let robots do that, it will lack all of the heart and eventually lose edge and turn to mush. There will be no human response to life as we know it. It will be life as a robots tell us to know it. And that's one of the things that I've always said about human-made art that the generated stuff can never have. It can't have your voice. It can't have your emotions, your impact, your expressions, your memories, the nuances that come with the human condition. That's what art is. It's a communication tool. It's a way of bringing somebody into a story, into an experience, into a character, into so many different things through music or performance or visual arts of different kinds or literature of different kinds. And art is something really amazing to me. And it means so much more to me than what I can put into like essay words. That is also why I don't believe that art is ever going to be in danger of being extinct by this. Because you're going to just have factories, which you already have in different ways. You're going to have products. But that's also why I search out contemporary artists today. Personally, I don't think that just reaching for old things, like I think old things have their place. Older stories have their place, definitely, and we should be reading older authors. But I don't think that we should be ignoring newer creators either for risk of touching the product, because now you're discouraging today's creators. Now you are saying that there are no such thing as today's creators. And I know that's not true. I know there are many people who are creators today. So I don't think that it's worth giving up hope because corporations are doing what corporations do. And that's also chasing you away from the indies that are making things. Now, there are a lot of indies that are also hacks that are doing this. Then you have Sir Elton John joins Paul McCartney in rejecting, in the strongest possible terms, the UK's government plan to upend copyright law in favor of AI companies. Elton John has called the new rules to prevent tech companies from riding roughshod over the traditional copyright laws. Elton John has called for new rules to prevent tech companies from riding roughshod over traditional copyright laws to protect artists' livelihoods. And John told Sunday Times that he felt wheels are in motion to allow AI companies to ride roughshod over traditional copyright laws that protect artists' livelihoods. This will allow global big tech companies to gain free and easy access to artists' work in order to train their artificial intelligence and create competing music. This will dilute and threaten young artists' earnings even further. The musicians community rejects it wholeheartedly. Further, Scarlett Johansson continues to be against generative AI, saying we must call out the misuse of AI no matter its messaging, or we risk losing hold on reality entirely. She says as she urges the government to do something, and as I mentioned earlier in this video, she is a victim of these companies taking her likeness against her will and selling it either way. And then you have, as mentioned by Elton John, Sir Paul McCartney spoke to BBC today calling for the government not to go through with its plans to upend copyright law to enable rip-off AI technology. If you're putting through a bill, make sure that you protect the creative thinkers, then the creative artists, or you're not going to have them. So another warning to say what they're doing is going to eliminate the creative class for the tech oligarchs. Over here, California is investigating OpenAI's conversion into a for-profit company, because initially they'd started out saying they were a non-profit company, and that was to save on taxes and everything, but they have always been in talks to become a for-profit, which is questionable at best. So they're investigating now. We'll see if that goes anywhere, because goodness knows how sketchy it is over there. Now we have to ask the question, what trillion-dollar problem is AI trying to solve? Wages. They're trying to use it to solve having to pay wages. Theft of labor, theft of livelihood, theft of everything from the people they want to replace with this stuff. And they say they're not trying to replace, but they're directly thieving trilobytes of data. So those are the stories that we are covering today. There is hope. There is always hope, because you're human. You have the human nature the human experience that you are going to express in any way that you see fit through the types of things that you make, whether artistic or not. So let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Personally, I choose to believe in humanity. I choose to believe in people. As much as there is darkness out there, as much as there are crappy people out there, as much as scary as things are, and as, like, I'm sure it's not as easy to tell just how depressed I am. Like, really, it's been a really tough couple of weeks. And I just try to survive. But I do believe in the work that humans do and the work that we do to connect to one another. And that is the value of art. And that is the value of connecting through art. And that's why I love talking about art on this channel. So with that said, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments below. Until next time, have a great weekend. Take care of yourself and don't die.
To my children, Tommy, Ike, and Annabelle, if you forget everything else I ever said in the lifetime we shared together, I need you to remember 3 things. 1. Minimize violence done to and by women. As givers of life, it's against their nature, God's design, to do harm, and every act of violence done to them is meant to break their souls, turning what should be a giver of hope into a black widow. A woman who destroys the life and the mercy of her care for no other reason but the corruption of her own self. It is only when you come across these kinds of women that you should put them down, for they are no better than the men who tarnished them. However, take no glee in what must be done. Finding any life so far gone, a black hole is where someone's heart should be, leaves only one solution: the mercy of death, and it's a tragedy when it happens. Make no mistake, a woman's love is the most powerful thing on this earth. It can start wars, end them, and change the devil himself into someone God sees worthy of giving a second chance. She don't owe this love to anyone, but she do carry it around with her so long as she's living. That is why the devil will do everything he can to pervert women's nature and destroy their innocence. Of every crime you can commit during your lifetime, be it out of daring or necessity, for every defiance you may act out against God, government, or man, avoid harming the innocent. For the day that we become bloodthirsty beasts where love don't exist anymore is the day hell on earth has come. And as bad as it may seem at times nowadays, we ain't there yet. 2. Everything you do in your life will create consequences, both seen and unseen, extending further than you can imagine. Nothing you do exists solely within your arm's reach. Think about every decision you make, every action you take, because you won't know how long your choices will stalk you, be them destructions or blessings, rumors or history been made. The truth of the matter is, your life will be controlled not by the truth of what you've done, but by the way others carry on about you. And the thoughts of others are more real in the long term than what you know to be true. It won't stop affecting you just because it ain't real, and no matter the life you've lived, most men can't outrun what's written in them in ink. It ain't hopeless though. Be firm in knowing who you are outside of the noise, and live beyond the means of the news of the day. 3. There ain't anything stronger than a family you build for yourself. What you put together is worth fighting for. Protect your loved ones with your life, and they'll give theirs in return. Family ain't defined by blood, understand that. And for as strong as the bonds of your family are, know that you'll find just as much passion in the people who hate you. While you'll risk your life for those you care about, those who find your existence to be an insult to theirs will risk themselves to put an end to their affliction. As cruel as it may seem, a man who hates you will stop at nothing until one of you is dead. It's a mistake to believe anything different. Don't let you be the ones taken from, be it by outlaw lawmen or by someone in between. The only one who'll be looking out for you is you and your kin. Maybe there's another way to be, but in all my years I've seen the worst of man, I ain't found another way around man's desire to conquer against all else. There ain't a changing of that mind, and sometimes I believe there ain't the ability for man to change at all, least of all through lead or legislation. I ain't claiming to be right about nothing. On many things, I don't want to be right. But what I do want is for my kids to live a better life than the one I did and avoid the mistakes that I made while finding the truth and purpose in what matter more than gold in this country. It's my hope that by sharing the things I learned that my kids will be better than their old man ever was, and that what I done isn't what people remember me for, but who y'all are going to become. That'll be the legend of Bill Cassidy.